You can achieve anything you want in life if only you believe with sufficient conviction and act in accordance with your faith. For whatever the mind can conceive of and believe, the mind can achieve. That's a very famous quote that I'm sure you've heard, because for decades it has been used by so many thought leaders, philosophers alike. It comes from Napoleon Hill's best-selling book, Think and Grow Rich. It's an oldie but goodie, and there's so much relevance to it. And if I may be so bold, I would like to add something to that that's missing. Sure, you can achieve whatever you can conceive and believe. That is, as long as you know first what it is you want, you've got clarity of purpose, clarity of what your intention is, and you're willing to pay the price. You're willing to do whatever it takes. And I'm speaking to myself also. So today, let's just take a quick dive in this short video lesson into this quote and understand some of the mechanisms, and I'd like to offer you a couple of quick tips to help build on that. After all these decades, I've been doing this work since 1971. I'm in my 5 decades. And I'm a great believer in the power of creative imagination. Imagination, creativity come from the same place as intuition. They are subjective faculties of the human mind. It's really about possibility thinking. It's really about breaking the barriers that hold us back so that we can innovate, come up with ideas, innovations, solutions that sometimes people get stuck and have trouble thinking of, and they get stuck in a problem, like that endless wheel, because they know what they know, and they're stuck in what we know objectively, what we know to be true scientifically, what we know, the evidence we have based on the research as of today. And you know as well as I do, history is full of illustrations of countless women and men who have broken those, proven the impossible by daring to what? Dream, daring to think of possibilities. And remember, they didn't just dream about it and visualize it, they also did what? Took plenty of action. So you've got immersion of an idea, immersion in learning something. Then there's repetition that makes it permanent. Then there's implementation, practice using it, and that leads, of course, to mastery. So when you and I marvel at someone and say, whoa, look at her, amazing, she makes it look so easy, what we're sometimes not appreciating is all the years, maybe decades, of honing that skill, of practicing, of developing it. And that's why I want to add, we need clarity of intention and purpose, as well as being willing to do whatever it takes. So let's talk about the latter part of the quote. Whatever you can conceive of and believe in. So the first part, whatever you can conceive of, is another way of saying, think of a dream you have, think of a goal, think of an aspiration. Maybe you're building a business, maybe you're scaling up your business, maybe you're building a loving relationship, maybe you want to slim down a bit and enjoy better health and well-being, because right now that's not true and you're suffering. Perhaps you want to just create a better lifestyle for yourself and your family. Perhaps that dream home, that dream vacation. Whatever your aspiration may be, that dream may be, the first step is, can you even consider it's possible for you to figure out what it's going to take? Can you even conceive of that possibility? So for example, way back when, those of you who know my work, my name is Ken Coscia. I serve as the International Training Director for the Silva Method. I'm the senior most instructor. I used to be the youngest in the world. Now I'm the oldest. I'm the senior guy. And by the way, although I turned 70 this year in 2021, I'm still one of the younger instructors. As you know, we've been around since 1966. I'm with that. And it's kind of interesting. In the early 70s, as memory serves, it was exactly 1974. July 1974, I had the opportunity to meet O. Carl Simonton, the famous oncologist who took the Silva Method, what we used to call the basic lecture series, which, by the way, is a 4 full days of training. And he began to apply what he learned in addition to, as an oncologist, radiation therapy, psychotherapy, nutritional counseling. And he began to adopt the proprietary process that Jose Silva created after 22 years of research. And he began to guide his patients into guided meditations, what we develop called dynamic meditation, which means you can get into a relaxed, quiet state of calm, typical of meditation, that causes your brainwaves to slow down. And you can think, you can focus, you can direct your thoughts, you can visualize. And I would tell you that in the 1960s, that was a very unique idea, and many gurus, many people criticized that. Oh, you'll come out of it, you'll lose it. And that we've proven is not true. Millions of people in 110 countries in using the program. So what Dr. Simonton did is he would guide his patients into a quiet, relaxed state. And by the way, when you can reduce the stress hormones, reduce cortisol and all the other stress hormones in the body, meditation is proven, and brain science shows it, to put us into a state of homeostasis. And when we get into a state of homeostasis and can sustain it for a period of time, it boosts the immune system. And that helps us to what? Fight off infection, disease, prevent colds, viruses, flus. It helps us to live a healthier life. It helps us to recover and heal more quickly. And yet, you can also then creatively imagine, visualize positive outcomes, do what's called inner work, change work. And this is what Dr. Simonton did. However, there was a problem. And one of the things, he gave a talk to us, and I had to meet him. We had a big convention in Boston, 1974, at the Heinz Auditorium, which is now at the Prue Center in downtown Boston. And he addressed, it's called The Attitudes of the Cancer Patient. If you're interested, his book, which is still available, called Getting Well Again. O. Carl Simonton. Anyway, he would guide his patients into this quiet, relaxed state. And then at first he'd say, now, and these were cancer patients, he would say, now imagine yourself healthy, vibrant, free of cancer. Yay! And guess what? Although it was very positive, at first many and most of his patients couldn't do it. They couldn't do it because it was inconceivable. They were branded back then, especially cancer. You know, if you had cancer, you were branded like, oh my God, it's like high risk. Chances are you're not going to live. And it was just too much for them to conceive of. And they lost it. They would get anxious. So by the way, when you're meditating and you're doing visualization, if you're getting anxious, you're getting restless, that means you're out of it. You're not in balance. You're not centered. And that's what would happen to them, which means your brainwaves are no longer in the alpha theta state, which is where you learn faster and make the impression, which is a whole nother topic. So what did he do? He started playing games. And as far as I know, he was one of the first, if not the very first person who pioneered this. And he had his patients, again, get into the alpha state, like we teach in the Silva Method, alpha theta state. And he would then ask them to play silly games. For example, he said, have you ever watched a war movie? Yes. Okay, so imagine in your body, while in this quiet state, you've got two armies. One army's dressed in white and one army's dressed in red. The white was symbolic of white blood cells, which they needed more of, and the red symbolic of cancer blood cells, which in the case of cancer are being produced way too many. That they could do. And they imagined the soldiers in their body in battle, the two groups, and those dressed in white, he said, now imagine they're overpowering them. They're a massive force. And he would guide them through this creative visualization. That they could do. And in fact, slowly but surely, it's not 100% by the way, but many patients, to the surprise, and there have been many so-called miracles, huge surprises, began to slowly but surely recover and heal. He went on to then mentor Dr. Bernie Siegel, who's a famous cancer specialist, a surgeon, at Yale University here in Connecticut. Dr. Seeger's a beautiful man. He never took the Silva program, but he was, truth be told, mentored by Carl Simonton, who, with permission, took the Silva proprietary process and began to teach it to his patients. He also did other silly kinds of games. I remember one graduate of mine, someone who went through the training with me, was diagnosed with way too much iron in his body. He needed to lower it because it could lead to anemia. It was called iron-bound anemia, and it could affect other things health-wise. And he didn't want to take medication. Now, by the way, I'm not a doctor and I'm not prescribing, and I always recommend you work under the supervision of your licensed health caretaker. So with the permission of his doctor, he said, "Doc, is this life-threatening? Rather than take the medication, can I for a while work on it naturally?" That's all he said. The doctor said, "Yes, okay, but you got to come back in 90 days because it's got to be addressed." Okay, fair enough. And he began to imagine, get into his alpha state, quiet, relaxed state, and he imagined in his body mine workers, coal miners, with the hat on, the flashlight in the head, the face is dirty, these little small coal miners in his body carrying a pail, and he imagined them mining the iron, taking iron out of his blood, taking iron out of his body. I know it sounds ridiculous, objectively speaking, logically speaking, medically speaking, it sounds woo-woo. I agree. But he continued that over the period of 90 days, several times a week, as I remember him telling me. And do you know when he went back to the doctor 90 days later and was tested? His iron count had lowered quite a bit. Still needed to lower more, but he made progress without any medication. I could go on and on with countless stories. I've been blessed to work with hundreds of thousands of people. So you got to take baby steps, is the takeaway for you here. You've got to tell the truth and make it believable. So if you're imagining a positive outcome and it's way out there and you find yourself saying, "Oh my God," and you're getting restless, that means you bit off more. So maybe, like for example, if you work on your weight, instead of saying, "I'm going to take off 100 pounds, go for 3, 4, 5 pounds at a time. Scale up your sales production by 5, 10%. So I could do that. That's what you want to work with. The other aspect here is whatever you can conceive of, imagine the possibility, and believe. Now, everybody's been talking about for a long time limiting beliefs and changing limiting beliefs. Well, let's look at it a little bit differently. A belief is a statement, an attitude, a statement we make of ourselves, or an attitude we have about what we think we can or cannot do. And it's usually based on what? Our life circumstances. Fact, what we've been able to do up to now, what we've learned, our level of education, our skills. Oftentimes, we don't believe in ourselves because we lack the skills. When I first started in this work in 1971, I almost immediately was mentored by Jose Silva. I was handpicked by Jose Silva to train and certify instructors and offer advanced programs. But I never pictured myself as a public speaker standing on stage before hundreds and hundreds of people, let alone even a small group of 5 or 10. And I was so enthusiastic. And yet for, I would say, a good year, solid year or more, a couple of years, when it was time to do a presentation, even though I was prepared, I knew it inside out, I would shake like a leaf, I would get dry, I would sweat profusely, I'd be soaked. I had horrible stage fright. But I worked on it. And I learned valuable lessons. I learned to stop focusing on, will they like me? Will it be okay? And what value can I have? How can I help them? Are people connecting with what I'm saying? Practicing breathing, practicing using the Silva exercises. And slowly but surely, I began to work on it a step at a time, imagining myself, visualizing myself in front of 1 or 2 people giving a presentation. Oh, sure, I can handle that. I could conceive of that. A little bit more, 5 or 10 people. You hear what I'm saying? And slowly but surely, there's no rush, whether it takes you 10 years or 10 days, but slowly but surely I began to build up that conviction. And that helped me to believe in myself and believing I could figure this out and handle it. And now it's not an issue. I have creative unrest because I get eager and enthusiastic to share. So another takeaway for you is take steps. Be careful not to compare to other people you see pros. There's some amazing people out there who have so much to offer. And we look and go, whoa, I could never be like that. Well, give me a break. Some of them have been around for 10, 20, 40 years or more. And they're not just sitting on their butts. They're constantly practicing. They're constantly gaining new skills, constantly educating themselves, constantly getting feedback. It's the implementation that that leads to mastery. So be fair in yourself and give yourself that aspect. So whatever you can conceive of and believe in. And one last point, why this is so true, as long as you're willing to take action and as long as you're willing to pay the price, do whatever it's going to take. I'm not talking about money. I'm talking about your time, your effort, your interest. And you have the skills, so you need education, you need the right training, whatever it might be, especially if you don't have those skills yet. Because we know this, that in the subjective state of mind, the so-called subconscious, it takes things literally. Objectively, our objective mode of consciousness always goes by the facts. Show me the money. Show me the data. But the subjective mind, the subjective faculties of mind, is where creativity comes from, intuition, imagination. And just think about it. The brain does not distinguish between what you vividly imagine and what you actually experience. And the more vivid it is in your imagination. And you may remember there's a famous experiment we've been doing Silva since the 1960s. And that is, if you imagine yourself getting a lemon, a fresh lemon, a real lemon, cutting in quarters, and take that little wedge and smelling it. Do it right now with me. Come on, you and me. If you're holding this lemon up to your nose, can you remember the smell of the fruit? Remember what it looks like, the color? Remember you've cut it in quarters. Now put it in your mouth and suck on it. And usually when you just even imagine it, there's nothing around that looks like a lemon, and yet you're salivating, you're maybe getting the taste. And not everybody. Some people can eat lemons, and they never have that reaction. But if you've ever had that reaction in eating a lemon, you have a memory. And the thought is a trigger to those past feelings and sensations, which cause chemical changes in your brain, which affects our physiology. And by the way, it affects performance. And you know this, we see it in sports all the time. I've worked with a few Olympic athletes. I've worked with so many people in playing tennis and golf game, to helping them improve their game, to improve their serve, to take a few strokes off the golf game by what? Mentally rehearsing their ideal self, getting lessons, watching the pros, the masters, and imagining as if you were them, as if, so to speak, your head was on their body. It's called modeling. You're not comparing, but you're modeling, learning, okay, how can I make this my own? Which is another tip, another takeaway for you. You get the idea? So I hope this is helpful for you and that you practice it. I'd love to hear from you, any of your solutions. Again, my name is Ken Coscia, and we work on this for 4 days in the Silva Method immersion of life and intuition system. It's what we developed in 2006, 2007 to update what we used to call the basic lecture series. It's a phenomenal program. If you know my story, I was flunking out of Boston University. I used these very tools I'm talking about now. I was in engineering. I took the Silva program after 2 years and ready to quit school because I couldn't handle it. I wound up graduating cum laude. And I was teaching Silva full-time in the Boston metropolitan area. I was able to get rid of headaches without the need of drugs and medication. I went on to teach my mother that she took the course, and then I made a guided meditation for her that she used every day. God bless her. She's no longer with us. And she stopped having asthma attacks. She got over her debilitating arthritis. And that's part of why I'm here now, inspiring. The mission of our program is to help people awaken their God-given capabilities, to awaken your human potential, and to learn how to direct it and focus it so that you create a better life for yourself, for your family, and ideally for the world. And I think you'd agree, our world could use a lot of help. So stay tuned, more to come.